Welcome back to The Wandering Screen. I'm Matt Koss. This ranking is from my least favourite Best Picture contender to my favourite in the category, but not necessarily of the year. Number 10, Killers of the Flower Moon. I read the novel in anticipation of this film coming out and was totally bewildered by how the screenplay concentrates on the perpetrators of this torturous time in the history of the Osage community. In the novel, we, the reader, only know as much as the investigation, whereas the film shows us its cards, namely the perpetrators conniving and plotting while keeping the Osage people in the dark. I couldn't believe that screenwriters Eric Roth and Martin Scorsese focused the story not only from the perspective of these cold-blooded, despicable cowards played by DiCaprio and De Niro, but that we as the audience knew more than the victims, their families, and the community across the country. I still don't understand how you read that novel and not focus more intimately on Molly Burkhart and her family. Lily Gladstone's fantastic, but there was a much better written movie here that gave her character more space, especially in understanding her devotion to DiCaprio's Ernest. Also, this is easily one of DiCaprio's worst performances. He was so unconvincing and all over the place, I couldn't separate the actor from trying to be this guy. The cinematography is stunning and the costume and production design bring this film to life, and of course Martin Scorsese is an amazing filmmaker. I just didn't like this one. Number 9, Oppenheimer. Let's start with the sound design and the balance of the score against the dialogue and the sound effects. I missed half the movie. Couldn't hear a word of dialogue. I was bored at one point because I did not know what was going on. The editing was also so sharp and sporadic, I lost track of who some of the characters were and what was going on. It felt frenetic and unfinished rather than with a clear path forward. I didn't understand why a film about Oppenheimer was needed. He wasn't fascinating to me, just arrogant and dangerous and pitiful. Cillian Murphy is fine, but I felt no attachment to this guy, particularly when he was supposed to realize the magnitude of what he'd done. It just didn't hit for me. Also, the Emily Blunt of it all. It was the oldest trope of a sideline female character given one scene to chew and the rest stumbling around drunk, slurring her words and leaving the room. Number 8, Anatomy of a Fall. I solved the case within the first 15 minutes. It's not a spoiler, I just knew what the outcome would be. I'm a loyal couch detective with many years of Law & Order SVU, Ally McBeal, Boston Legal. I know when there is a case and when there isn't, and it was clear that whatever happened that day at the house in the middle of bumfuck nowhere would remain a secret. I thought the use of flashbacks to fill in spaces for the audience but not the characters was unnecessary. As the investigation and the court case unfold, the possibility of culpability hangs in the air as she is interrogated, and the sounds of the fight between her and her husband was more revealing in exposing that private moment than watching them in a flashback that no one in the courtroom can see. Sandra Hüller, of course, is fantastic, but the film needed to cut down on some of those courtroom scenes because there wasn't really much going on with this case. I mean, the expert witnesses were there and they were like, this is definitely the way it happened. Like, she did it, but maybe didn't, and we don't know because we can't actually prove it and we weren't there. Number 7, American Fiction. What happens when a writer reduces his voice to pander to black stereotypes and suddenly finds success? Cord Jefferson's debut is extremely accomplished, and it finds a lot of heart through Tracy Ellis Ross and Leslie Uggams' performances. Monk, played by Jeffrey Wright, finds himself alone, taking care of his mother and moving into this new phase of life. Sterling K. Brown is hilarious and so deserving of his supporting actor nomination. I was moved for this author who couldn't understand how he could be giving people what they wanted if they weren't actually hearing him. Honestly, I just thought Monk needed a hug. Number 6, Maestro. This might have been further down the list if it wasn't for a stunning sequence in the middle of the film when director Bradley Cooper does this 6-minute one-shot take for a concert set in a cathedral. It's so cinematic and sensorially absorbing. The audience in my theatre, my screening, erupted in applause when the song ended, even before the audience in the film reacted. How often do you get to watch a movie where the audience is so moved and engrossed that they react as though living in the screen? Bradley Cooper is a great director and he gives a full-body performance, but Carey Mulligan's character, Felicia, holds the empathy. Leonard Bernstein is just there to be an asshole. There was a previous iteration of the script that focused on Bernstein's life, but when Cooper jumped on board, he wanted to focus on Bernstein's marriage, homosexuality, and infidelity. Like, it screams Oscar bait when you're watching it, and that focus was very heavy-handed and ultimately it felt dated. Here's another sad sack soapy gay film about how a guy who loves a woman as her soulmate sleeps with guys. His name is Maestro and his dick is his baton. I actually didn't know much about Bernstein before the film, and after researching his life and accolades there was so much brilliant work to explore. Technically, the film is a masterpiece, from the prosthetics to the lighting and the camera work to the performances, but this script is the film's ultimate downfall. Number 5, Barbie. Let me preface this by saying that Greta Gerwig first came into my life as Frances Ha in my early 20s. Little Women is also one of my favorite films of the last decade. I love Greta. Here with Barbie, she's constructed an amazingly sincere and grounded world. Billie Eilish's song, What Was I Made For, works so beautifully as a connective tissue throughout the film, and Margot Robbie is so convincing as Barbie, and America Ferrera gives her second best performance. Oh, what? What was the best one, you ask? Dumb Money is out on Netflix, and if you watch the scene of her chatting with the guy at the gas station, that's what I think is her best performance this year. America Ferrera should really, by now, be a staple of entertainment. Give her more, give her everything. I love what Barbie stands for, I love the message, but I don't love the fact that Mattel just emerges as this new studio conglomerate eager to exploit each and every toy under its umbrella. I do believe that there are creative minds at the company hoping to broaden what a film based on IP can be, and Barbie feels like the beginning of more risk-taking. Number 4, Poor Things. Yorgos Lanthimos creates this unique pastel world full of surrealistic eccentricities that comes together so easily and convincingly. It's an incredible vision and it feels like a Michel Gondry film, only with the knowing that you're watching a Yorgos film that is equally unsettling, vivacious and compassionate. He makes it so easy to leave that suspension of disbelief and become fully immersed in this world. Emma Stone can do no wrong, and this role is a beautiful display of her physical comedy and timing. I loved Mark Ruffalo in this, being his horny self and dancing up a storm. This was such a fun film also to walk out of because I couldn't wait to talk about the quirky details and this insane premise. Number 3, Past Lives. This beautifully tender debut from Celine Song has had such a powerful effect on cinema this past year. Not only has it stayed screening in theatres for almost a year, but it's also been nominated over 200 times at various festivals and ceremonies across the globe. It's everywhere. This is such a small and universally relatable film about connection and missed opportunities and love. Everything works so symphonically, from the gorgeous photography to the delicate pacing, and how Greta Lee and TOU embody a connection across these decades. Yes, studio films like Barbie and Oppenheimer are cinematic beats and box office gross and audience adoration, but Past Lives is the other end of the spectrum, and its presence is substantial. Number 2, Zone of Interest. When I was 17, I went on a program called March of the Living, where you travel with around 10,000 people from around the world to Poland to commemorate the Holocaust and march from Auschwitz to Birkenau. We visited the city of Majdanek, where the concentration and extermination camp was built and operated. At the death camp, there's a massive crematorium that still houses the ashes of murdered Jews. It also sits at the bottom of this sprawling hill that's lined with houses rising upward overlooking the camp itself. The city looked down on the camp while smoke billowed from the crematorium as screams resounded against the concrete walls of the gas chambers. The resounding question amongst the group I travelled with was, how did you not know? How could you do nothing? The zone of interest held me in that place. I felt like I was living in that city of Majdanek, watching the skies change colour and the air filled with screams. This little garden of prosperous plants where this commandant and his wife live held no freedom and no guilt or shame. This eagerness to live next to the atrocities was profoundly bleak, and director Jonathan Glazer, who also wrote the screenplay, masterfully balances the sensorial presence of extermination alongside willful indifference. The ending took me right back to the halls of the museums of Auschwitz. That feeling of profound loss and heaviness, because before you, behind the windows to preserve, are the belongings of those who perished. Piles and piles and piles. I truly feel that everyone who has seen this film, whether they've been to visit these death camps or not, understands that this movie gives that feeling, that kind of achingness of watching people willfully ignore, and that kind of cinema wows me. Number 1, The Holdovers. I love a feel-good dramedy that pushes away predictability and has a steady balance between plot and momentum and character. Paul Giamatti's Hunnam is insufferable and such a sympathetic character at the same time. David Hemmingson and Alexander Payne just quietly rip these worlds open over a 2-week period and offer a chance to move into another chapter of their lives. When we're moving someplace with characters needing an adjustment and we start to see it along with them, it makes for such a heartwarming movie and watching experience. I love the humbleness, I love Divine Joy Randolph, I love the classic aesthetic, and I love that I can't wait to watch this when Christmas rolls around again. Thank you for joining me today. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more reviews and let me know your thoughts on my rankings below.